inspiration, encouragement, motivation on the Journey with James. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Journey with James podcast. I'm James, of course, and I am elated, as I always say. I'm elated, and happy and just content and full of joy that you have joined me for this edition of the Journey with James podcast. This is season 2 of the podcast, episode 2, and this is podcast number 22. We are now 22 episodes in with the Journey with James series. I'm on the road to 50, and so I thank you so for joining me on this edition of today. And today we're going to talk about the process of transformation is what we're going to talk about today. As you guys have known that over the last few years, I have been doing a transformation in my life, changing some things that need to be changed after going through so much. I've been through some traumatic situations, I should say, and some big life-changing situations. And so with all those things that occur in your life, you have to make the decision. Are you going to change for the better? Are you going to evaluate yourself? Or are you just going to falter in your pain and become a victim? Because we all can get that victim mentality, because I've been there. And sometimes you got to check yourself. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, part 1 today. And so just a little bit of housekeeping. You can find this podcast on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, hello to you guys. Thank you for watching. And if you want to listen in your car, listen while you clean the house, or just listen in your quiet time, your peaceful time, you can find us on Spotify. You can find me on Spotify. You can find me on Apple, Google, or really any other major podcast entity that you may enjoy. So go to your podcast of your choice, type in the Journey with James podcast, and see if we're there, if I'm there. I don't know why I keep saying we, but and I guess because I used to do a podcast with someone else. But with all that said, just remember, you can just type in the Journey with James podcast and I should pop up. OK, and so thank you so much for joining me on today. I promise I'm going to get that right. And one thing about this podcast, I'm going to be real. Any kind of mess ups, anything, I'm going to include it because I'm about being authentic and being true to who I am. And sometimes we mess up. And so I keep saying we, but that's OK. That is all right. I'm human, but it's definitely I. This is my podcast. So with all that said, thank you again for joining me. And today I come up with this whole the process of transformation after seeing a number of different quotes and different things I see on social media all the time that really encouraged me. But one particular one that I kept seeing popping up, and it really resonated with me, and it coincides to where I'm at in life right today in May. It says May of 2021. It says, so many people from your past know a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. And I'm going to read that again because that's really, really deep. If you really think about it, that is some deep stuff there. It says, so many people from your past know a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. And so when I think about that particular verse, I think about my past issues, my past mistakes, my past wrongs, my past setbacks and different things like that. And so a lot of people may know me of the things I've done wrong in my past, things that I'm not so happy and I don't care to share. It's part of my journey, and you don't need to be shared with everyone, but some of my closest friends and family, they know about it. But when I think about that, there are some people that just dropped me completely because of my past mistakes. And let me just share with you guys, there is no one without sin. There's no one without a past. There's no one without fault of something. OK, so just remember that no matter how good of a person you are, there's someone out there that think you are, a butthole, if I can say that. OK, just remember that. But with all that said, it takes the effort and the time to say, you know what can I change in my life? What can I do to make it better? Because I do know, based off that quote right there, I do know there are people out there that see me and perceive me a certain way. Although I'm a good person, they've seen some of my issues. They've seen some of my past mistakes, and they're basically defining me based off of those things, not even realizing that I could be changed and I could become a changed person. So it really resonated with me reading that, and it really helped and encouraged me to keep going in my transformation, because I've had some life-altering things happen in my life. It's plain and simple, and I'll go into more detail. With the loss, when you are restarting your life, basically, you have to basically start from scratch, and that's what I basically started from scratch with the know-how and the understanding that there has to be change for me in order to heal properly, in order to grow, in order to become the better version of myself. So many times I encourage, I inspire, I motivate so many different people in life, but sometimes the encourager needs encouragement. And sometimes the motivator needs to be motivated. And sometimes the inspirer needs to be inspired. And so I understood that I needed all those things. I would sit there and regurgitate different things that will help someone else and encourage them. But all along, I need that encouragement for myself. And so realizing that, I understood that there's a transformational process that God was taking me through. And so one thing that God took me through is the process of elimination, basically. Um, I would cling to. Sometimes we take temporary pleasures for eternal pains, and I always say that we cling on to the vices in our life. The drugs, the sex, the porn, all those kind of things. All those things that gives us a temporary high, a temporary feeling of good, a feeling just free, and feeling like you don't have to worry about nothing. You can forget about everything. But what happens is when we have that temporary pleasure, you're going to enjoy it for that moment. And let me be clear, you're going to enjoy it, but for that moment. No matter what it is, anytime you deal with it, if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever vice it is, that moment is going to leave eventually. And you still have to deal with yourself when it's all over. And so what happens is you tend to go into a cycle in your life. You keep going back to that vice because you keep losing that high that you had. No matter what that high is, you keep losing that high. And so you keep going back to that high to get that high. You keep going back to that vice to get to that high. And there's a trickle down effect. It tends to bring you down more and more depression, more anger, more bitterness, and more unhealedness, if that's even a word. You become more unhealed. You're not healing properly. And so it doesn't get better. It gets worse. And you just find you're in this spiral in your life, just can't get it together to save your life. And that's where I was at a point in my life. I was at that point where I would let those vices take place of my healing, take place of God, basically. That's what it was. I let those temporary pleasures go for those eternal pains when all I had to do was give it to God, give it all to Him, and let Him handle it. And through that handling the situation in my life and the things that I go through, just put yourself in there and put yourself in my shoes. Not even putting yourself in my shoes, but just think about things that you're going through and imagine God taking over, and imagine Him taking you through that process of healing. And through that process, I had to understand that God was going to put me through some things. And so He had to eliminate some things and eliminate some people in my life that meant me no well, didn't mean me good. No matter how I didn't want to let them people go or let things go, God removed them. And I had no choice. And so that's what happens sometimes. God will do that. But all along, I've lost some friends. I'll be honest, I have. Some just stopped talking to me. Some, it's just so different things like that. And it can bring you down. And for somebody like me, if you know me, I'm a sentimentalist. And I always say that I'm a sentimental human being. And I'm not afraid to say it. There was one point in my life that I was like, oh, I'm a man. I can't be sentimental. But that's who I am. That's who God made me to be. That's my makeup. And when God made me, He made me fearfully and wonderfully. And He said He made no junk. He makes no junk. And so I'm unique in my way. So imagine if we were all the same, it'll be boring. And so my uniqueness is my sentimentalness. Maybe saying it wrong, me being sentimental. I really carry things in my heart. And when I really love somebody, it's going to be expressed. And some people can't express it differently. They express it different because they are different people. But as for me, my friends, my family, my people know that I'm a person that will show love to others. And so with that said, I had to realize that sometimes you gotta let people go and let situations go and let things go. And you may not want to. And God would move those things. And I appreciate it now. Some friends, different things like that. I could say that I do have some new friends, different things that I'm invested in. And I had to learn some things. Sometimes we hold on to things, situations, people, because we feel like it'll give us what we need, but sometimes they don't. And that in the situation of the people or the thing don't, it's just like a high, you have to let that go. And when you let it go, God comes in and He does something, He does some work. And so He removed it actually. And so when He did that, He started doing some more work with me. to more work, and I became lonely. Let me tell you, the feeling of loneliness will get you in despair. And so I became lonely, but what happened is it forced me to spend time with God. It forced me to think about his goodness. It forced me to be honest with him and to cry out to him and to even if I was mad, just say, Lord, I don't understand. Why are you doing this to me? It allowed me to do those things. And I'm going to tell you, I got such peace after that. And I'm still in that process. Sometimes I have to still do that because in that process, God is healing me. And in that process, he's talking to me. In that process, he's allowing me to let it out and be free and be myself and to be honest. And in that honesty, that's where the healing began for me in that process of life. And so in my overview of transformation, that's the point that I'm at. I'm in the process of growing and becoming that better version of myself. I am much happier now. I will say that I am much happier now when I started being true to who I am and true to my desires, my feelings, and who I am as a person. I had to understand that I'm good enough no matter what. If people reject me, if things like that, I have to realize that I am good enough for somebody, anybody, and I'm not talking about such as like so much of relationships, friendships. I'm just talking about as a whole. I had to learn to love myself enough to know that I am enough. To love yourself enough is to know that you are enough. And that when loving myself, it helped me to grow into the person that I am today. And it helped me to heal as well, because sometimes low self-esteem will cause you to do some toxic things, because you start to overthink things in situations. It becomes toxic because you overthink so much and you assume and you perceive things a certain way. And it's really the enemy lying to you. It's not that way. And so God has to deal with me with overthinking as well. He has to deal with me in my mind to take away all that analyzing, like to the point of craziness. Like, okay, it can't be that way. The enemy is really messing with my mind. And so that's a process too, is learning not to overthink. And we all can get there when we overthink things, but we have to know what to do when we get to that point, because we all can get there. So when we get to that point, what do? We replace it with positive words. We replace it with, no, that's not true. It's a lie. I trust you, Lord, and I trust what you're saying. I'm not trusting what I perceive. I am trusting that you're taking care of me. I'm trusting that that's not true about such and such, and that's not true about this, and that's not true about that. You start reinforcing it with positive words. And that's the key, reinforcing with positive words when you overthink. Because like I said before, we all get there. Maybe some get it more than others. I would say that. Some don't get it like others. But when you get there, you have to turn it around. You have to force yourself. And that's the hardest part of the time. Sometimes you sit in that thing, but you got to learn to force yourself to start trickling down to positivity so they can get inside of you and they can change your whole mindset and your perception of things that you're going through. So I had to realize that some things had to change in my life, plain and simple. I don't do the things that I normally would do or used to do or whatever. I've learned that I have to take care of self. And one of the biggest things in my process is learning to take care of self, because I find that I always would do what other people say. I was the yes person. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll do that, because I wanted people to love me. And I was the type of person that would do anything that somebody else wanted to do, but I would forget about my own feelings just to make that person feel good about themselves or give them what they want. And so I had to learn that I had to set a boundary with that. No, my feelings matter as well. And it's so important that we understand that, we can't always be a yes person. We can always say yes to what everybody wants us to do all the time. And it's okay to say no. And it's okay to say no, but in a loving way. Okay. You don't have to be nasty and nothing like that, but it's in a loving way, because when they can respect that, that tells you that you can hold on to those people, because they respect that, you need time to yourself, or you can't do that, or you don't have the power to go to that level or whatnot. And so we have to understand that as well. And so that thing is a process. So I care for myself in fitness. I go and I walk, I do the exercising, I take time to get in my word. God is the first thing I get. I have relationship with, I have time with in the morning. When I say that, I mean devotion, scripture, prayer, listening to God because he speaks, and just those things that set my morning, my routine off right. And then everything else falls into place. And another way of taking care of myself is expressing my love to others that I love. And by, checking up on people, texting, conversating, the people that I love dearly, investing into them, and I have to realize everybody doesn't invest the same way, but I can't help but be myself. But that helps me to love myself by being loving to others and loving on others and my close ones and people that I care about and people in general. And also just having confidence and walking boldly. And I'm gonna tell you something. As a news producer now, I would tell you this. You asked me a couple of years ago, I'd be like, I don't know if I can do that, because my confidence was pretty much shot. It wasn't. I had confidence, but it was kind of being, taken away because I started to not believe in myself enough that I could do it. And so now I am a news producer, but it took me to have confidence in myself to know that I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me, which says in Philippians 4:13, but also knowing that in one of my favorite scriptures as well is Joshua 1:9, it says, be strong and courageous. And why did God say to Joshua to be strong and courageous? He told him that because he knew that he was getting ready for a battle, and it may look into Joshua, he may have been a little fearful, and he may look at it as, oh my God, I don't know how I can do this. But sometimes what we see and perceive, God says, I got you. All you got to do is trust me. And so when it comes to that, news producing, different things like that, I kind of looked at it like, oh my goodness, what did I get myself to? I can't do this. But then I was reminded of God's faithfulness, and he gave me that position. And so he's going to get me through it. If he give it to you, he's going to get you through it. And I've been good. I don't even let things like when challenges come now, I find in myself, I don't even think twice. I was like, okay, I'll do it. Oh, I'll do this. I'll do that. Something I normally wouldn't do, because I know that God has got me through all those other times. He's going to get me through this time as well. And so keep that in mind for yourself when you are battling with taking on a challenge, because when challenges, you grow. And I'm going to tell you, I've grown because I've challenged myself, and I'm ready for the next challenge. That's how it becomes like an addiction, but a good one, because we know that God's going to see us through each and every time. Okay. Well, that's pretty much what I have for the first part of the process of transformation. I'm going to have about 2 more talking about the process of transformation in my life, because it's my journey, but I hope my journey can help you in your journey. And I would love to have some people want to talk about their journey in the future as well. But for the next 2 podcasts, it's going to be part 2 and part 3. So stay tuned for that as I continue the series, the process of transformation in my life. And remember, you can always follow me on Instagram at Your Journey with James. I'm there. I'm going to have a Facebook page pretty soon. The website is still being updated, so I'll give you that website address once that's done. But you can always follow me on IG. I will post there more. I don't have much posted there. I have more posted on my personal page than I do on my personal IG page than I do on my Journey with James IG page. But that's going to change. I'm going to start giving some daily inspiration and motivational quotes and different things like I used to do back in the day. That's going to come back as well. So please check me out there, because you never know. A word of encouragement could set the tone for your day. It can change your day if you're having a bad day. And also, you can always send me an email to journeywithjames@outlook.com. I check my email pretty frequently, and I would love to hear from you, your thoughts, questions, concerns, or even show topics you'd like to talk about. Even if you want to be a guest on the show, let's talk. I love to talk. I love to have a conversation. I love to hear your story, because we are on this journey of life together, okay? And remember, you can always find me on YouTube on The Journey with James, or you can find me at Code J Wilkes, and you can check out old past episodes on YouTube, but also on Spotify, Apple, Google, and pretty much any major podcast platform of your choice. Just type in Journey with James podcast, okay? So thank you for joining me for episode 2, season 2. And this is podcast number 22. 22 episodes done, and we're on the road to 50, okay? Join me again next week for part 2, okay? God bless you guys, and you take care. And thanks for listening and watching the Journey with James podcast.